had a chance to look at it, I didn't want that. All right, the time is 6:37. I'll call this work session of the mayor and council to order. Excuse me, what was that?
What time?
6:37.
We'll go over the regular meeting first. We'll have the invocation, we'll have a moment of silence for both Ms. Breck, who passed away last week, and also Mayor Nunley, for Mayor of Loganville. Hopefully, we will not need a moment of silence at the next meeting. Announcements, you all received a copy of our announcements. Pledge the flag, ceremonial matters, presentation of money raised for the city of Snellville Canine by Wild Wing Cafe. Information.
I think we need to table that because he's not going to be here.
He's not gonna be here?
Or I don't know he's not.
Until the next meeting, or till?
Yes, next meeting where he has enough advance notice to attend.
You all received a copy of the minutes from the last meeting. Does anybody have any questions, objections, or changes? Okay. Department reports, it was requested the last meeting we put our reports back on the agenda, so we have the planning commission, Chairman Williams. Has anybody talked to him? Does he plan on being here tonight?
He was planning on being here, yes ma'am.
And does he have a report to give on this one?
We had one case and he said he would give a report on it.
Parks and Rec Advisory Board, Lisa, do you have anything to report tonight?
Yeah, a couple items.
Stat, is Kelly plan on being here?
She is.
Public Works, Ms. Johnson.
Yes, I've got a certificate for a scout that did some stormwater work for it.
And then City Manager's report, you're gonna take that
I'm
off.
gonna yield my time to the other folks.
We have no consent agenda. Under old business, we have our public hearing on the Jiffy Lube property. Mr. Davis.
I hope y'all got the rest of the Jiffy Lube thing from my email this afternoon. This is the Jiffy Lube that is up behind Verizon Wireless on Reagan Parkway. The applicant had requested a series of CUPs that would cover a multitude of uses that we would not have any issues with anyway. We'd probably give the CUP. He wanted to get them up front because whenever he made an offer to someone as far as leasing the place, then when it came up to 60 or 90 days going through the process, they were having some issues with it. So he made a request to us that we do kind of a blanket CUP for the various things we would normally give CUPs for. This was presented to the Planning Commission at their last meeting, and they did agree to that with the 7 conditions that are on the ordinance. Basically, it was prohibiting precious metals dealers, pawn shops, brokers, or title pawn places. If contractors' offices went in and they had outdoor storage equipment, they had to be screened off in the rear parking area. The dumpster enclosure had to be redone to meet our current requirements of Chapter 19. We wanted to add some overstory and understory trees to the existing landscape. For the most part, that landscape just kind of needs to be cleaned up, fixed up, and trimmed up, but there are a couple of areas where some new material needs to be added. All this has been agreed to. Signs 15 feet high or 225 square feet larger than that are prohibited. The standard uses involving adult entertainment, etc., are prohibited. And then any additional non-substantial variances, the planning department would be allowed to give an administrative variance for that. This seemed like a pretty straightforward issue. Planning Commission supported planning department's recommendation for approval. If there are any questions, I'll be glad to try and answer them.
He doesn't have any clue who his listener might be.
He's got several people who've looked at it. There's no firm deal yet.
And I think I asked you this, we don't have any underground oil storage or any of that stuff on that location?
No, we don't. They did lube in there, and they've got a couple of pits in there.
Is this the first first time, since 2005 it's ever come in front of us?
Yes, ma'am, as far as I know. It's the first time, I've been here almost 2 years now, it's the first time I've seen it.
Any other questions?
Davis to be.
Mr. Davis, I have another question, sorry.
Yes, ma'am.
The last condition about the non-substantial variance as determined by the planning, is that our standard language or have we changed that?
As far as I knew, it's fairly standard.
Okay.
We've used it on quite a few.
That just seems like that was the language that got us in trouble with the crematory.
Don't know.
Good use for it. Crematory in the town. Think outside the box.
We're inside the box.
We then have, first reading on consideration action on a text amendment to the zoning ordinance to delete and replace, RS 180, with RS 150. General district to allow community living arrangements, family personal care homes, and group homes as conditional uses. You wanna tell us what's going on with this?
Some time ago, you all asked, you had asked us to look at a new, community living arrangement, personal care home ordinance, and do some research on what we could and could not do in that area based on some issues we were having with our recent rewrite. We did that, looked into it. I've got, and the package has gone out to y'all, where we have a DOJ statement in there as to what can and cannot be done. We have a statement in there from the American Planning Association, which looks back at DOJ, again saying what can and cannot be done. And we have proposed some changes to the current requirements. Basically from Department of Justice calls, a residential use is a residential use. So we cannot forbid a residential use in a residential area. What we can do is look at still using the CUP, conditional use permit, because it is a business structure in a residential area, and we want the opportunity to have some form of control on these things if we can use it. We also have a separation requirement that we put in there, 600 feet from the property lines to any other use of this type. Now, what that basically does is any lot that falls, any portion of that lot that falls inside that 600 square linear foot buffer from the unit, then that lot is also kicked out. But it allows us, if you take a map and look at where all the personal care CLAs and things are in the city, the buffer requirement that we're put in there pretty much seals up those areas. They can't have any more.
In that area?
In that area. There are areas of the city where they could go in residential neighborhoods, but we would be limiting the number that could go by the separation requirement. That was okayed because a lot of the operators of community living arrangements and personal care homes, things are designed for people to be in normal homes in normal neighborhoods. They want it to be as normal as possible. So they like the separation requirement so that you don't end up with a situation where, you know, an entire street turns into personal care homes or CLAs, and then it's just another form of institutional area. This way it keeps them in the neighborhoods. We ran this past our city attorney, and he okayed it for us, and we put it into the process to move ahead, at least get a hearing on it and see what everybody thinks.
I'd like to see how that ordinance would apply to a neighborhood. Like take Summit Chase or take another neighborhood in the city, and using those boundaries, show me how far apart houses could be.
Okay.
I mean, if you're talking about 600 feet, then every 600 feet, there would be another group home, right?
From an existing group home, 600 feet to a group home. Yes.
Okay, so every third house could be. Well,
The
maybe
way our
every
lots,
fourth,
the
depends,
way our
yeah,
lots are
probably
set
every
up,
fifth
they're
house.
75 to 100-foot lots.
Well, every fifth.
So you could be 4 to 6 lots out. But when you look at a lot of the areas where we have these houses concentrated, this wipes out the ability to have any more in those areas.
But most
So
of
then,
the,
but then they'll move it on, what I'm gonna say is, they're not gonna, there's gonna be in other neighborhoods then.
They're gonna move to other neighborhoods, they're gonna look at other neighborhoods, but that's the whole point. If you read all that DOJ stuff, you can't prohibit them,
I understand.
but there's a 1 acre minimum,
not anymore.
not anymore.
No, they had to go back, we had to go back to the same size lot in the zoning area. Now, what I did do is put in a clause, which Tony agreed with, that for any living unit that includes more people than what we identify as family, which is 6 persons, once you pass 6 people, that's an identified family unit. So if you have a 7th person in there, then you need to find a lot 10% more space than the minimum lot size in that neighborhood. So if the minimum lot size is 30,000 square feet, if you're putting 7 people in there, you need to find a 33,000 square foot lot.
But if it's a septic lot, then there is some limitations with regard to
There will be
septic.
limitations because they have to be approved
Right,
by the county.
right.
So if they wanted to put, if it was on 10 acres and they wanted to put people in there, then if they had more people than that line was set up to hold, then the line would have to be modified, or they'd have to tie in the sewer.
Why couldn't, if you've got 6 people, that's 16.6%, why couldn't you do 16.6% extra for every
Person.
extra person?
Probably
Instead of 10.
And one other question, who determines that 6 is a family unit? That's, the average family unit in Snellville is certainly not 6 people.
That's how it's defined in our
We set that
ordinances.
a few
We
years
set
ago.
that ordinance a few years ago.
In Athens, they changed that, and it was challenged, but I don't know what the result of that challenge was.
The number that you can go, that I think you can go to is 3. And so, you know, that's something to think about as we go through this process. And this is one area where we've been slow to get our input into John. But our concerns have been the financing mechanisms that are used by people who sign up for this types of projects with the state, and the state's not regulating it, and we want to give the city some teeth to do the financial oversight, at least in the approval process, to make sure you were setting up a company that would be successful. They're used as sometimes they're used as, and this probably isn't fair, but I think of them as scams where you use a nonprofit overlay and they come in and they actually buy in a house using Social Security resources. And so you know, I think we have the right to close that loop off and make the nonprofit required to own the house. And then you got a nonprofit enterprise that's truly a charity that comes in and oversees that. And most of them will fit into the category. So the other thing that keeps happening that we want to draft around too is the state keeps changing the definitions, and they're going to keep doing that. They're going to keep adding, try and deinstitutionalize and fix their problems with operational care for people. They're shoving it out to the communities and redefining it to assisted living and, you know, every type of area where they need somebody to be housed. They're pushing it out in these forms and keep changing the definitions. We're going to narrow those a little bit, and so that it's easy for us to treat everybody who comes out wants to be a non-family, single-family residential living arrangement. They get all treated fairly. And to me, the best way to do that is not the conditional use permit, but the special use permit procedure, which I've not used before, but it gives you more criteria to analyze. So it gives you, so what I suggest is that we pay close attention to this over the next month. It comes back up. You know, we miss a meeting this month, and so we've got a couple of planning commission meetings where we can draw recommendations off of those.
Well, at this stage, if you go to planning commission, if you tell them what you just told me.
Right.
Which I didn't know you were doing.
Right.
Then they may want to table it, and that'll push it out to July before it comes back again, late June, early July, if it made it through the second.
Right.
That way, you'd have more time to look at it. The separation number that I used is essentially a city block. and that number is logical and defensible. If you wanted to push that number out, you could.
And also, is it from the structure or from the lot line?
It's from the lot line,
Okay,
which adds 75 or 100 feet in both directions usually.
yeah.
I really would like to look at I mean, 6 is a family unit, just is not consistent with the family unit size. I mean, the census would tell us, I think it was 2.9, I think was the average.
Right. We have a definition in our codes of what constitutes a number that can be a family unit.
Okay, that can be changed, can it?
We can change it.
Right.
You're going to find, if you look at census numbers, your family unit size is going to be down in the 2.3 to 2.9 range.
Right, I think it was 2.9 was the last one.
What happened with the 1 acre requirement? Why'd that go away?
There's no, I can't put, based on my reading of the law, and I think Tony backs me up on this, we can't make a requirement in a residential zone that is not the same for any house in that residential zone. So I can't say, because you're gonna do this, you must have 1 acre. The only way I can do that is if I tie it to numbers of people that you're serving, the lots get bigger. I use 10% because it's a pretty easy number to use and it makes sense. If you want to say, divide it by the number of people in a family and it's 16 point whatever percent.
Or whatever that number
Whatever that number becomes.
Lowering that number has consequences too.
Yeah.
Don't forget that.
See, right, if you lower that number to just 3, for instance, then it becomes 33.3% that it goes up.
Well, but it affects other,
It affects other
normal
things that we
families.
do.
I mean,
Yeah.
you've
But
got your
also,
mom, if you had a couple of kids at home still.
But that's not, the definition of our ordinance is not related, it's 6 people that are unrelated.
Unrelated.
It's not,
Yeah.
it's,
Yeah,
so it
but-
wouldn't apply if you had
It's not
blood
blood
related
family.
relatives.
It's a definition of an artificial family.
But
So
John,
So Gwinnett had to change their minimum 1 acre too as well, did they not?
They haven't changed it yet, but they haven't been sued yet either.
Well, they just need to know all about that.
I have some questions.
Okay?
Can we find out what happened in Athens, because I think they changed theirs to 4 or 3, and with the apartments it was challenged, and so I don't know if that was upheld or not. Thank you, Jamie. How did the DOJ opinion come about?
It was a paper that DOJ put out on their website.
So it wasn't
dealing-
directed to us?
It wasn't
was in
directed to
general?
us. It's a general paper that they put out saying, across the United States, we have a lot of problems with these kind of housing units and regulation of them. These are things you can do, these are things you can't do.
So has the 1 acre gone away because we've actually been sued, or because we just, in a caution because of the opinions we received, it's not wise to do?
I think it's, based on what I read and what I sent over to Tony to look at, it's not wise to do it because it's not unless they had a septic tank on the site and you had 1 acre minimums for septic tank, then you could make a case for it.
But no agency or court has actually invalidated our ordinance as it
They have
stands.
not invalidated our ordinance, no. You all asked us to look at the ordinance
Right.
and see if we could improve it to bring it more closer into line.
and the weakness with the ordinance is, it's a CUP, and so planning commission's looking at it and staff's looking at it, and you trigger those, you know, if they meet the criteria, then you don't get to look at it anymore. It just comes up to vote yes, and so it was obvious that the mayor and council wanted a more detailed review of that process. But John he is right. It's the Fair Housing Act, and it's a sensitive area with the Justice Department, so we have to be careful.
I understand all that, but we had the moratorium before, and we revised our ordinance, and then we were tipped by some of the people of the county that when they were denied county applications, they were coming to Snellville, because it was easy to get group housing in Snellville, and it was affordable housing. So my concern is now, if we're taking out that 1 acre and the county still has it, instead of regulating it more, we're gonna be opening the floodgates even more, so this seems to have kind of backfired on us,
Not
what
if
are we
you-
gonna do?
Not if you put the separation in.
Okay, and so is that what's gonna distinguish us from the county, or can you
That will
send us a
dis-
copy of the county's ordinance so we can see what it
Sure.
says in comparison?
We can.
Can we go 700, 800? Is there a number that you shouldn't go beyond?
I wouldn't make it a quarter of a mile or something. I think you could probably, you might could go up to like 1,000 feet. And
Yeah,
that
1,000
would
feet.
be defensible.
1,319 feet. That wouldn't be
But I think, we better get this on the videotape, I think Tom has a good point. Right now, we have, these houses are controlled to certain neighborhoods because that's where the affordable houses are located. And with the separation unit, are we really solving a situation, or are we just pushing it off to other areas in our county?
You could
Or in
push
our
it,
city.
In our, I mean, excuse me, in our city.
you could be pushing it off to other areas in the city if they could afford the units that are involved.
Okay, so it has to do with the housing.
It has to do with the housing market as well. The units are clustered where they're clustered for a reason. The houses are cheap.
2 more questions, I'll let you sit down, I feel bad
That's
just
okay.
standing up.
I've been sitting all day.
The separation unit, what if someone comes up and buys 3 homes? Do those homes have, if they're bought by the same organization, is it per
Has
home?
nothing to do
or
with
is
the
it-
ownership.
Okay.
It is a separation of use.
Last question, is it worth having a first reading on this if we're not really ready to go forward? Should we table it?
That's your call.
I think we should table it.
table.
And we could pull it from planning commission tomorrow night. And see what happens, the reason I asked to do this was we're in that situation where we're gonna have a weird meeting schedule or lack thereof for the next couple of months. You're missing a meeting in May, you're missing a meeting in June. This would allow me to have the regulatory consecutive meetings. Now, it may not come out of planning commission. If planning commission, I'm gonna tell them we had our first reading discussion tonight, we're not operating on it. Y'all are of the opinion it should be tabled. And that's probably what'll happen with it, because they're gonna come back with some of the same questions you.
Now, when it comes back out, it'll still have to go for a first reading again, correct?
When it comes back out, it'll have to go for first reading, but it'll also end up going to the May 28th planning commission, and then first reading probably ain't gonna occur till July.
Right.
And here's the-
Unless you wanna give us you've got first meeting in June, you have. The second meeting in June interferes with GMA, and we normally have a called meeting, but it's specifically for the budget. So you're not gonna wanna put a public hearing in that meeting, I don't think, since it's budget hearing.
Mhm.
So our next sequential meeting dates push off to July,
When does the moratorium expire?
End of May.
end of May.
And
Oh,
you
we
need
just
to,
renewed it.
you did,
You
but
did.
you did it to the end of May, but you need to do it again, because this is your last real meeting to extend that.
Can
Yeah.
I extend it for like 120 days?
I'd do it to the end of August, because y'all are gonna have all that budget stuff coming up in the middle of it.
Yeah.
So,
120 days would push it out to
so on that
June,
action item tonight,
July,
I'd
August,
extend the
August 3rd.
moratorium and table the matter.
Mhm.
I thought we couldn't do that if we didn't have it on our
Yeah, it's
agenda.
not
so
on our
people could
agenda.
think.
I think you'll be safe in this situation in doing that, to be
We
honest
can
with
put
you.
it on the May meeting to extend the moratorium.
Yeah, we could do that.
That's fine, yeah.
Anybody else have questions for Mr. Davis? Thank you. Item C, public comment, discussion, consideration, action on Summit Chase, Lower Lake Dam. Mr. Sanders, you wanna give us an update?
What's that?
Not really, you wanna give us an update on what's going on with the dam?
The last report I heard was the HOA had filed their complaint with the contractor. Their lawyer had submitted that. I've heard nothing since.
Where are they in their loan?
Denied.
Still denied?
Understanding they got denied,
Well, I didn't know any.
last I heard.
Can't let you speak during the work session.
Ma'am,
Can't let you speak during the work session. but you
not
can
speaking.
All right, moving on, new business, consideration action